And welcome to the special edition of Hannity. And tonight, an important warning about the Democrat Party. Traditional liberals, moderates, they no longer have a place in the party that they once called their home. Far left authoritarians have now taken over, and now they're using the Democratic Party as a vessel to destroy our great American way of life. They don't believe in freedom or individualism as much as they claim, or on inalienable rights. Instead, they prefer government, mandated collectivism. For them, the Bill of Rights is just standing in the way. In the name of, quote, common good, they want to control where you live, how you travel, what you eat, what you wear, what you drive, and, of course, what you're allowed to think and what you're allowed to say. God forbid you say the wrong thing. And they want to force you or shame you to follow their health care demands. They want to eliminate self-defense, self-reliance, and force everyone to comply with mother government. And according to these Democrats, well, they're going to do all of this for your own good. Thank goodness they're in your life in order to achieve this left-wing utopia. They are using even our Department of Justice to enforce their radical vision, first by squashing any and all dissent. God forbid you speak out at a school board meeting. You know, another example, the political persecution of Donald Trump, far beyond anything this country has ever seen. It's never happened in history before. Now, first, they attempted to destroy his presidency over a real conspiracy theory hoax. Now he's facing hundreds of years behind bars because of a variety of far-fetched, overreaching indictments, all timed for maximum political impact in the lead up to a presidential election. At the very same time, the DOJ is seemingly ignoring, very real evidence of corruption, possible bribery, money laundering against President Joe Biden. In other words, Biden's weaponized DOJ trying to imprison his chief political rival, all the while giving Joe a free pass. That is what you see in a far-left banana republic or in the old Soviet Union. Political enemies, they get locked up, they get silenced. Those in charge, they live privileged lifestyles, no rules at all. Ever wonder how Joe Biden affords 2 lavish residences in Delaware despite his life in public service? The far-left Department of Justice doesn't seem to care. They're not curious at all. That's because his last name is Biden and not Trump or Clinton. In the case of Clinton or Biden or Trump, you know the difference. And the Bidens are always willing to toe the party line. Well, our friend, the great one, Mark Levin, has a brand new book entitled The Democrat Party Hates America. And tonight, he will join us for the full hour, explain the deep history of how we have gotten to this point and just how bad this has become. We also know him as a nationally syndicated radio host of Life, Liberty, and Levin, right here on the Fox News Channel every Saturday, Sunday night, 8 p.m. Great one, Mark Levin. Great to have you, sir.
Well, thanks for having me. I think this is a very, very important topic, and I appreciate you spending time on it, Sean. I really do.
Let me put up the chapter titles, if I can, here, and let people take a look at it. I've read this now cover to cover. It is an extremely comprehensive book, exhaustively researched, and we talk about the real, and there's a distinction. You call it the Democrat Party hates America, and we'll get to that in a second. Few Americans likely know about the deep history that you go into in a lot of depth here. Some of the history I knew, some I did not know as I was reading this, and more importantly, the danger that they represent to the country today to fundamentally change our country. So in many ways, the history is relevant to where we are today because, most Americans I meet, they're extremely troubled about the direction of the country. I'll let you take it from there.
Well, Sean, I really want the American people to understand what we're dealing with here. For over 150 years, the Democrat Party has done everything it can to undermine this country. The party of the Confederacy was the Democrat Party. The party of slavery was the Democrat Party. The party of the Klan, the party of lynching, the party of segregation, right up into the 60s, was the Democrat Party. The party that supported the internment of Japanese Americans was the Democrat Party. The party that was all hyped up and supportive of eugenics, which was also used against blacks, by the way, was the Democrat Party. I look at Woodrow Wilson, a Klansman, a racist, a segregationist, Franklin Roosevelt. I spent a lot of time on him because the lies on Franklin Roosevelt are immense, despite all the documentaries and books. Why? Because Franklin Roosevelt was the first big socialist, anti-constitutionalist elected to the presidency. He was a racist, he was a segregationist, and an anti-Semite. Lyndon Johnson, who they credit with the 1964 and 65 Civil Rights Acts. Lyndon Johnson was a racist and segregationist to the day he died. And I explain that in the book. Joe Biden came into the Senate. He immediately sought mentors who were racists and segregationists, mostly from Mississippi and Alabama. He's been able to conceal that because he's also quite the chameleon. This is the history of the Democrat Party. We can go into Joseph Kennedy, the head of the Kennedy clan, a horrendous anti-Semite, so bad that he was quite supportive of the early Third Reich, that Franklin Roosevelt had to yank him back as ambassador in Britain. Margaret Sanger, Hillary Clinton got an award from Planned Parenthood. She founds Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood supported birth control, eugenics, and so forth, mostly because it wanted to control the population, particularly blacks. She was a racist and so forth. So when you look at these issues, and not just the history, you look today, the Democrat Party cannot survive without racism, segregation. It's now busy resegregating society. Ask the Asian community, ask anybody who goes to colleges or universities today, read critical race theory. That's what it's all about. So they moved from that, they moved to American Marxism. What they don't accept is Americanism. And here's what's very, very crucial to understand. The Democrat Party is not just a political party. The Republican Party is a political party. They try to win elections. They do a very poor job of explaining what they stand for. Most of the time, they don't even know what they stand for. And people tend to vote Republican because they don't want to vote for the Democrats. Of course, that's not good enough, but maybe that'll be a book for another day. When it comes to the Democrat Party, they don't just want to win elections. They want to permanently win elections. They want to monopolize the political system. They want to monopolize the voting system. They want to monopolize the government. And right now they're succeeding. They're monopolizing the culture as well. Look at the media. So the Democrat Party is what I call the state party. There's not a dime's worth of difference between what the Democrat Party does and supports the bureaucracy. A massive bureaucracy that legislates every day, issues regulations and fines, will determine whether we have automobiles that can run on the combustion engine. That's determining what kind of fixtures you can have in your home and what kind of appliances that you can have on your home, which means they can determine anything and everything. We may have a government shutdown. There's always a threat of a government shutdown. Why? Because the Democrat Party, for the most part, not exclusively, but for the most part, created this massive fourth branch of government that's not even in the Constitution. And they want to make sure it gets all the resources possible, all the manpower possible, 87,000 more IRS agents, more FBI agents, whatever it is. They don't care if the private sector shuts down. That was righteous during the pandemic. But if you shut the government down for 24 or 48 hours, what I call a long holiday weekend, they will tell you the sky is falling. Why? Because they've created this centralized Washington, D.C., massively powerful and ubiquitous unelected government. So even when they lose elections, their policies are implemented. And the Republican president is sabotaged by this massive bureaucracy. But take a look at the Democrat Party. Woodrow Wilson, Franklin Roosevelt, Lyndon Johnson, Joe Biden, more. Today you have Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is a Marxist. He almost won the nomination to the Democrat Party. He's had more influence on the Biden regime than anybody else, than perhaps Obama. And what is Obama? Obama's mentor was a Marxist. Obama hung out with domestic terrorists, as you reported over and over and over again. But who else is there? You've got AOC, Tlaib, Omar, Priestley, Bowman. 24 individuals in the House of Representatives who are Marxists. And they're proud of being Marxists. Now, they don't call themselves Marxists. They're shrewd, but they are what they are. So the Democrat Party is all about, whether it's 150 years ago or today, abolishing our Declaration of Independence. Woodrow Wilson hated the Declaration of Independence. Obama used to cut words out of the Declaration of Independence. Biden doesn't support the Declaration of Independence. He doesn't even say he does. They despise the Constitution, which is why they embrace the 1619 Project. pulling down the founder statues, calling us a nation founded in white supremacy, even up to this day. They want to abolish our traditions, our customs. They're trying to destroy our language. They use censorship. They use intimidation. More. Again, it's more than a political party. It is an autocratic party. It is a tyrannical party, which is similar to these kinds of parties throughout Europe and other parts of the world. It is an anti-American, really alien entity, and it has caused more hardship, more blood, more impoverishment. And if you think about it, the Democrat Party, if we didn't have a Democrat Party, if we had a legitimate opposition party to the Republican Party that accepted losses, that had comity, C-O-M-I-T-Y, that wasn't trying to destroy the opposition party by fixing elections and so forth and so on, through repression, not just censorship, but trying to put its opponents in prison, whether they're parents, whether they're pro-lifers, whether they're members of the Catholic Church, and whether it is Donald Trump. If we had a political party that was a legitimate, pure political party, rather than an autocratic party that was founded in evil, that has lived through evil, and that to this day perpetuates evil, this would be a far better and greater country than it is today. That's why I call the book, The Democrat Party Hates America. I gave it the title when I finished it. And just to finish this point, Sean, when's the last time you heard a Democrat criticize any of the individuals that I mentioned? FDR, they love FDR. Lyndon Johnson, they love Lyndon Johnson. They lie about these people. Woodrow Wilson, same thing. Margaret Sanger, Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood gets billions and billions of dollars. We can go on. You never hear them speak up in favor of the founders of the country, in favor of the framers of the Constitution, in defense of the Constitution. They try and twist it like the 14th Amendment to accommodate what they want. But they don't support them. They support people who hate them and are trying to destroy them. And their surrogates, the teachers' unions, are doing a hell of a good job of that by brainwashing our children and diverting them from getting an education to other things. So the point is, the Democrat Party is an autocratic party. And by the way, like most autocratic parties and autocracies, they camouflage their true purpose by claiming they're doing these great things for the people, especially the poor. They're doing these great things because they defend democracy. How? By destroying the voting system? How? By trying to put an opponent in prison for the rest of his life? How? By trying to destroy the Electoral College so only Democrat cities are represented? How? By destroying the judiciary? By populating it with left-wing radical bomb throwers? How? By intimidating Supreme Court justices? Exactly how does the Democrat Party promote democracy?
Let me ask, as you go through this history of Wilson and Margaret Sanger and Lyndon Johnson and Robert Byrd, Robert Byrd filibustered, you point this out in the book, the Civil Rights Act. I've talked about it often in 1964. But fast forward, the president today, a guy by the name of Joe Biden, and you mentioned other Democrats, when Byrd passed away, boy, they all praised him as their mentor. But Joe Biden took it even a step further, because he stood with Byrd in the 70s against the integration of public schools, because he didn't want public schools to become, in his words, racial jungles. And my question is, politically today, because you're right about Democrats, every 2-4 years, and it's almost basically now every day, they claim that Republicans are racist, that they're sexist, misogynist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, transphobic. They want dirty air and water, and they want grandma and grandpa to be thrown over a cliff by a Republican, preferably. But they do this, and it's all based on a lie. They claim that they have a monopoly of compassion for the poor and people of color in this country. No, they don't. They don't care about minorities in this country. And my question is, if more minorities knew the history that you're laying out here about the people in this party, including the former president, not wanting integration of schools, would they vote differently? Are they influenced by the propaganda thrown at them regularly by the Democratic Party?
This is a great question, and let me take a minute to answer it. First of all, much of what's in this book isn't even known by Republican senators or House members. If they had the information, you would hope that they'd be able to respond when they are called racists or anti-Semites or bigots. One of the great con jobs that has taken place in this country, that the party of racism today, whether it's anti-black racism or now anti-white and anti-Asian racism, is that the Democrat Party has managed to project onto the Republican Party its own history, its own belief system. It is shocking to me. We have Republicans in the Senate who don't even understand or know any of this. To answer your question about minorities, of course, one of the reasons I wrote this book is because ideas have consequences. The truth matters. We are not at the precipice looking into the abyss. We are in the abyss trying to crawl out. So as some have said in the past, the truth shall set you free. Who is behind this? The Democrat Party. I'll get into this in a minute. I think when the black community learns that Franklin Roosevelt invited every Olympic participant in the 1936 Berlin Olympics to the White House except Jesse Owens, that might have an effect that Jesse Owens voted against FDR and was appalled by FDR. And he was asked if Hitler had snubbed him. He said, I never met Hitler. FDR snubbed me. He never invited me. He never sent me a note. He never did anything. FDR refused to ever talk to the NAACP. FDR kicked out most black journalists when he had his press conferences. FDR never lifted a finger for the black community, despite what Doris Kearns Goodwin and others have to say. As a matter of fact, in 1940, a bipartisan federal law was placed on FDR's desk to outlaw lynching, a federal lynching law that would outlaw lynching, and he refused to sign it because he was running for his third term and he was afraid he'd turn off fellow Democrats in the South. Same with the Jews. FDR refused to allow Jews into this country, even though the cap for the number of European Jews had not been met. He and his State Department refused to allow Jews in this country at the height of the Holocaust, which resulted in many, many dying in gas chambers. He refused to bomb the railroad tracks leading into Auschwitz, even though we were bombing facilities 5 miles from those railroad tracks. He worked with the New York Times and other media outlets to try and censor what was going on in Europe and the Holocaust during his presidency. And he was a bigot and he was a racist. And if people don't agree with that, read it. And I've got the endnotes to prove it. He was all those things. Just as Lyndon Johnson, the great civil rights leader, Lyndon Johnson was a racist to the day he died. He didn't have an epiphany. Lyndon Johnson wanted to be president. His own biographer said he opposed every single piece of civil rights legislation until 1957, when Eisenhower was pushing a Civil Rights Act of 1957. And he goes to Eisenhower and he says, I'm going to kill this bill unless you weaken it, and unless you take the enforcement mechanisms out of it. And then he goes back to his fellow segregationists in the Senate, the Democrats, and he says to them, okay, I got Eisenhower to take the teeth out of it. We're not going to filibuster this. Why did he do that? So he could play both sides, because he was planning on running for president. The 1964 and 1965 Civil Rights Acts, those laws would not have happened but for the Republicans, period. So the Republicans have supported every single Civil Rights Act since immediately after the Civil War up to and through present times. Ronald Reagan, he was the one who signed Martin Luther King's birthday into federal law. He was the one who signed a 25-year extension of the Voting Rights Act, which had never been done before in American history. And I can go on and on and on about this. The Democrat Party doesn't give a damn about people. It's got propaganda. It's the state-run party. It's got its massive bureaucracy, and it is a state-run media. A state-run party, that is, a party that monopolizes the culture, that monopolizes everyday politics, that monopolizes our government. They need a monopoly of the media. We talk about a free press. We don't have a free press. We have a press that's free to lie to us. We have a press that's free to expand the positions and the propaganda of the Democrat Party. Again, there's not a dime's worth of difference between the press and the agenda of the Democrat Party in this country. And there's a reason for that. Because if you're an autocratic party, if you're a tyrannical party, you're not just a political party. You must control thought processes. You must push the propaganda. You must decide what can and cannot be said, who's good, who's bad. People who went through the Third Reich, people who went through Mao's China, people who went through Stalin, they've all written fantastic books on totalitarianism. And they all say pretty much the same thing. Control the language. You are to control who's good, who's bad. You are to change the language. You are to control the thought processes. So we've reached the point now, and I explain in the book in great detail, this is where the Democrat Party is, that we're not even free to say what a woman is and what a man is. This whole transgender movement, this anti-nuclear family movement, this anti-parental rights movement, it is intentional. It's right there in the Communist Manifesto, Marx. And here's the other thing. I think it was Mises who said, and I put it in the book, we all talk like Marxists now. We all talk like Marxists now. We don't talk like a free people. You never hear from our politicians the word individualism, private property rights, freedom, liberty, limited government. You never hear this discussed anymore, and yet these are the core founding principles of America. Instead, you wake up every day, and there's an effort by the Democrat Party to destroy one part of the Bill of Rights or another part of the Bill of Rights, to try and destroy people's reputations who want to pray, who want to speak on behalf of their children, who believe in life as opposed to abortion on demand. People are censored. They're censored about medicine. They're censored about science. Their knowledge is censored. And so who is behind this? It doesn't just happen. This isn't nature. It is the Democrat Party. Why? Because the Democrat Party hates this country. When Obama said, when Michelle Obama said, when Bernie Sanders said, when Hillary Clinton said, when Joe Biden said, I go way back, that they want to fundamentally transform America, that's the giveaway. Fundamentally transform it into what? Well, you've got to destroy the belief in the country. You've got to destroy the country's customs and beliefs. You've got to destroy our value system. You have to rewrite our history. You have to destroy our founding. So there's no more connection to the country. And that's what you do if you want to advance a radical Marxist or leftist agenda. And that's exactly what this party is doing. And my point is, ladies and gentlemen, it is a very, very evil party.